The impossible artifact. The Nexus prism hung suspended in the center of the chamber, defying gravity and logic. Its translucent surface caught the light in ways that shouldn't be possible, splitting it into colors that had no names in any human language. Captain Maya Chen stood before it, transfixed. After 3 weeks aboard the Vexeri research station, she still found herself breathless each time she entered the chamber. Magnificent, isn't it? The voice belonged to Zivax, the Vexeri chief scientist. His 8-limbed form moved with fluid grace as he approached. For 10,000 cycles, the greatest minds of 27 civilizations have failed to unlock its secrets. Maya nodded, her dark eyes never leaving the artifact. And now you've invited humans to try. The newest spacefaring species in the quadrant. Why us? Zivax's mouthparts clicked in what Maya had come to recognize as amusement. Precisely because you are new. Your species sees with fresh eyes. And there is something different about humans. The Vexeri hadn't been the first aliens humanity had encountered upon venturing beyond their solar system 50 years ago, but they were among the most advanced. Their civilization spanned 3 spiral arms of the galaxy, with technology that made Earth's greatest achievements look like children's toys. Yet they had welcomed humans into the galactic community with surprising eagerness. Different how? Maya asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. It was the same reason her 5-person team had been selected from thousands of applicants for this mission. Humans had an uncanny ability to see patterns where others saw chaos, to make intuitive leaps that defied logical analysis. You are unpredictable, Zivax said. Where the Mirandi approach problems with pure logic and the Kathik with spiritual insight, humans improvise. You make connections that should not work, yet somehow do. Maya smiled. We call it thinking outside the box. Yes, and the Nexus prism is the ultimate box. The rest of Maya's team was scattered throughout the station, each paired with Vexari specialists in their fields. Dr. Sanjay Kapoor, their physicist, was analyzing energy readings. Lieutenant Jackson Reed, security and tactical expert, was studying the defensive measures that had been implemented around the prism over the millennia. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, linguist and cultural anthropologist, was deciphering the symbols etched into the chamber walls. And Kai Watanabe, their tech specialist, was developing new scanning methods to penetrate the prism's impervious surface. Has anyone ever discovered what it actually does? Maya asked, circling the artifact. Despite its name, the prism wasn't exactly prismatic. It was an irregular dodecahedron, roughly the size of a beach ball, with surfaces that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. There are theories, Zivax replied. The most common is that it's a repository of knowledge from the precursors, the species believed to have seeded intelligent life throughout this galaxy before mysteriously vanishing. Like a library, or a weapon, came a new voice, deep and resonant. Maya turned to see Drovak, the military attaché assigned to the prism facility. Unlike the scientist Zivax, whose exoskeleton was pale blue, Drovak's was a deep crimson, marked with the scars of countless battles. Many believe, Drovak continued, that the precursors didn't vanish. They were destroyed by whatever force they created this to combat. Maya had encountered this theory before. And you think this artifact is a weapon? Why else would it resist all attempts to access it? It waits for the right wielder. Zivax's antennae flattened in disagreement. The Prismatic Council believes it's a test. The precursors wouldn't leave a weapon for just anyone to find. They would ensure only those ready for its knowledge could access it. Either way, Maya said diplomatically, we're honored to be given the opportunity to study it. She reached out, her hand hovering just above the prism's surface. She didn't touch it. Strict protocols prohibited direct contact without authorization, but she could feel something emanating from it. Not heat, exactly, but a kind of awareness. Captain, Drovak said sharply, no species has made progress by repeating the methods of those who failed before. If humans wish to succeed where others have not, You must try what others have not tried. With that cryptic advice, the military officer turned and strode from the chamber, leaving Maya with the distinct impression that she was being maneuvered toward something. "Don't mind Drovak," Zivak said. "The military caste has grown impatient. For generations, they've envisioned using the prism's power to expand Vexeri influence. And the scientific caste doesn't want that. We serve knowledge, not conquest," Zivak replied, but his compound eyes darted away in what Maya recognized as discomfort. There was more to this story. Over the next few days, Maya's team immersed themselves in the challenge. They reviewed the attempts made by previous species, the mathematical approaches of the Mirandi, the quantum resonance techniques of the Quillari, the psionic probing by the now extinct Benturi. None had produced results. Then, exactly 1 week after their arrival, something unexpected happened. Dr. Kapoor was running a standard spectral analysis when his instruments detected a fluctuation in the prism's energy signature. It was subtle, so subtle that the Vexeri monitoring systems hadn't registered it, but it coincided precisely with Maya entering the chamber. "It's responding to you, Captain," Kapoor said, his voice hushed with excitement, "or possibly to humans in general. We need to test this." The tests were conclusive. The prism reacted differently when humans were present, especially Maya. The fluctuations were minimal but statistically significant, and they grew stronger the closer she came to the artifact. When they reported their findings to Zivak, the Vexeri scientist's reaction was not what Maya expected. Rather than excitement, he exhibited what appeared to be anxiety. "This is unexpected," he said. "We must inform the Prismatic Council immediately." "Is there a problem?" Maya asked. "No problem, but such developments must follow proper protocols." That night, Maya couldn't sleep. The prism called to her, not in words but in sensations, a pulling at the edge of her consciousness. She found herself walking the corridors of the research station in her off-duty clothes, nodding to the occasional Vexeri she passed. None questioned her presence or destination. They had grown accustomed to the strange sleep cycles of humans. The prism chamber was minimally staffed during the night cycle, with just 2 Vexeri technicians monitoring the instruments from a console across the room. They acknowledged Maya with a respectful gesture but didn't interfere as she approached the artifact. Standing before it, Maya felt the pull more strongly than ever. Something about the prism recognized her, called to her specifically. Without fully intending to, she raised her hand. "Captain Chen," came a sharp voice from the entrance. "Step away from the artifact." Maya turned to see Drovak, flanked by 2 Vexeri guards. "I was just observing," she said, lowering her hand. "The Prismatic Council has convened an emergency session." Drovak said, "Your team's findings have complicated matters." "Complicated how?" Maya demanded. "There are those who believe humans should not be permitted to access the prism," Drovak said. His voice was neutral, but Maya detected an undertone of warning. "Ancient prophecies speak of the final species, ones who would come after all others had failed, who would unlock the prism and usher in a new age. And some think that's us, humans. The coincidence is troubling to certain factions. Politics," Maya sighed. "Even across the galaxy, some things never change." "Indeed," Drovak agreed. "The Council debates while history unfolds before them. They will deliberate for days, perhaps weeks." Something in his tone made Maya pause. "But we don't have weeks, do we?" Drovak's antennae twitched. Word has spread. Other species are dispatching envoys. The Mirandi Collective has already lodged a formal protest against human involvement. "Great," Maya muttered. "Interstellar politics was not in my mission brief." "Captain Chen," Drovak said, lowering his voice, "whatever the prism is, it has chosen to respond to you. In all our history, it has never responded to anyone. Some believe this means humans are the inheritors the precursors intended. And others fear what it means if humans unlock what 27 other species could not." Drovak's gaze shifted to the prism. I do not share their fear. I believe what happens next is meant to happen." With that cryptic statement, he gestured for his guards to depart, leaving Maya alone with the two technicians and the prism. She turned back to the artifact, understanding now why she felt so drawn to it. Something about human neurophysiology, human consciousness, human perception was different. Not better, necessarily, but uniquely suited to the prism's design. Maya reached out again, and this time, there was no one to stop her. Her fingertips brushed the surface of the prism. The world exploded into light. Images flooded her mind, stars being born, civilizations rising and falling, a terrible darkness spreading between galaxies, and a desperate plan conceived by beings of pure energy. She saw the prism created not as a weapon or a library, but as a key, a seed, a beginning. She saw what no alien species had seen in 10,000 years of trying. The truth. Maya Chen collapsed to the floor as the prism began to glow, brighter and brighter, bathing the chamber in a light no one had ever seen. The technicians scrambled for the alarm, but it was already too late. The impossible had happened. A human had awakened the Nexus prism, and everything was about to change. The human element. Maya awoke to chaos. Alarms blared throughout the station. Red emergency lights pulsed in rhythm with the pounding in her head. She was no longer in the prism chamber but in the medical bay, surrounded by frantically working Vexari medical staff and her own team. "She's conscious," Alina Rodriguez announced, relief evident in her voice. "Captain, can you hear me?" Lieutenant Reed leaned over her, his face tight with concern. Maya tried to speak, but her throat felt raw, as if she'd been screaming. How long had she been unconscious? "The prism," she managed to croak. "What happened?" The humans exchanged glances. It was Kai who answered, his usual technological confidence replaced by wonder. "You activated it, Captain. After 10,000 years, you woke it up." Maya's fragmented memories began to coalesce. The touch, the visions, the truth. "It's not a weapon," she said, struggling to sit up despite the protests of the medical staff. "And it's not a library. It's a seed." "A seed?" Sanjay repeated, confused. Before Maya could explain, the door to the medical bay slid open, and Zivax entered, followed closely by Drovak and several other high-ranking Vexari she didn't recognize. "Captain Chen," Zivax said, his voice carrying none of the friendly warmth she'd grown accustomed to. "You have violated explicit protocols and created a situation of grave galactic concern." "With respect," Maya replied, finding her voice growing stronger, "your protocols were designed for species who couldn't activate the prism. They don't apply anymore." One of the unknown Vexari stepped forward, his gold-flecked exoskeleton marking him as a member of the ruling caste. "I am Texan, emissary of the Prismatic Council. Captain Chen, do you understand what you have done?" Maya looked him directly in his compound eyes. "I understand better than anyone in this room. The prism showed me." "Impossible," another of the Vexari delegation scoffed. "The artifact has no consciousness, no ability to communicate." "Doesn't it?" Maya countered. "For thousands of years, it waited for a species with the right kind of mind to understand its purpose. The precursors didn't disappear, they evolved. They transcended physical form, and they left the prism as a way for other species to follow their path." The room fell silent. The darkness between the stars. Maya continued, drawing on the visions that still swirled in her mind. The void hunger, that's what the precursors were preparing for. A force that consumes civilizations, that feeds on intelligent life. It's coming. It's always been coming. The prism is the key to surviving it. Texan's antennae quivered with what might have been fear. "These are dangerous claims, human. The void hunger is a myth, a story to frighten hatchlings." "It's real," Maya insisted. "And now that the prism is activated, it will begin the process the precursors designed. Not a weapon, but a transformation. a way for physical beings to evolve beyond the void hunger's reach. Drovak stepped forward. The prism chamber has been sealed. The artifact is changing, growing. Those who have approached it report visions similar to what Captain Chen describes. Texan turned on the military officer. You allowed others near it. The council ordered complete quarantine. The council is not here. Drovak replied evenly. I am. And I have seen enough to believe the human speaks truth. Before the argument could escalate further, the station shuddered violently. Warning klaxons joined the already blaring alarms. We're under attack, Lieutenant Reed said, checking the station's security feed on his tablet. Multiple ships have breached the outer defense perimeter. Who? Ziv Ax demanded. The Mirandi Collective, Reed replied grimly. And they're not alone. I'm reading Kathik war priests, Quillari scout ships, even a Drexian dreadnought. Texan rounded on Maya. Word of what you've done has spread faster than we anticipated. Every spacefaring race in this sector will come for the prism now. Then we need to move, Maya said, swinging her legs off the medical bed. Her head swam, but she forced herself to stand. The prism can't remain here. It's too vulnerable. And where would you take it? Texan demanded. Earth, Maya replied without hesitation. If humans are the ones meant to unlock its potential, then Earth is where it belongs. Preposterous. Texan sputtered. The artifact has been under Vexari protection for 3,000 cycles. And in that time, you've learned exactly nothing about it. Maya shot back. With respect, emissary, your protection isn't worth much against a coalition of species determined to seize it. Another violent shudder ran through the station, stronger this time. Emergency bulkheads began to seal automatically as breaches were detected. We don't have time to debate this, Drovak said. The station will not withstand a concentrated assault. We must evacuate. My ship is in Hangar 3, Maya said. The RSV Curiosity wasn't large, but it was fast and fitted with the latest human stealth technology. We can get to it through the maintenance tunnels if the main corridors are compromised. To her surprise, Drovak nodded in agreement. I will provide an escort. The prism must be protected at all costs, even if that means entrusting it to humans. Texan started to object, but another explosion rocked the station, throwing everyone off balance. The lights flickered and died, replaced seconds later by dim emergency lighting. Primary power is down, Kai reported. Life support is on auxiliaries. We move now, Drovak declared, no longer asking for permission. What followed was a desperate race through the dying research station. Maya's team, led by Drovak and flanked by his personal guard, fought their way through corridors filled with smoke and panicked Vexari personnel. They weren't the only ones with the idea of reaching the prism chamber. Twice they encountered armed boarding parties from the attacking ships, and Lieutenant Reed's military training proved invaluable in repelling them. When they finally reached the prism chamber, Maya stopped short in amazement. The artifact had changed. It no longer hung suspended in space, but had expanded, filling nearly half the chamber with a pulsating crystalline structure that seemed to be growing before their eyes. It's terraforming, Sanjay whispered in awe, adapting the environment to its needs. How do we move it? Elena asked, the practical question cutting through their wonder. Maya approached the transformed prism cautiously. As she drew near, a portion of the crystalline structure separated from the main mass, condensing back into a shape similar to the original artifact, though now glowing with an inner light that pulsed in time with Maya's heartbeat. I think it's coming with us, she said softly. Drovak's troops formed a protective cordon as they made their way to Hangar 3. The journey was a nightmare of collapsed corridors, firefights with boarding parties, and the constant fear that the station's artificial gravity or life support might fail completely. When they reached the hangar, they found chaos. Vexari evacuation pods were launching in all directions, some being picked off by the attacking ships. The Curiosity sat untouched in its bay, ignored by the Vexari in their panic to escape. We'll never make it through that blockade, Reed said, watching the tactical display on his tablet as enemy ships swarmed around the station. We will, Maya said with a certainty she couldn't explain. The prism, now cradled in her arms, pulsed more rapidly. The prism will help us. Drovak stepped forward. I'm coming with you. So am I, Zivax added, having followed them despite the council's emissary ordering him to remain behind. I've studied the prism my entire life. I won't abandon it now. There was no time to argue. The 8 of them, 5 humans and 3 Vexari, boarded the Curiosity and prepared for launch. As Maya had somehow known it would, the prism guided them. When she placed it on the navigation console, it interfaced directly with the ship's systems, revealing gaps in the enemy formation and temporarily blinding sensors that might have detected them. They slipped through the blockade unnoticed, entering FTL speeds before pursuit could be organized. It's protecting us. Elena marveled as they watched the tactical display show their improbable escape route. It's doing more than that, Maya replied. It's taking us somewhere. The navigation system displayed a course correction that none of them had entered, aiming not for Earth as they had planned, but for a star system at the edge of the galaxy, one not marked on any of their charts. Should we override? Reed asked, his hand hovering over the controls. Maya shook her head. No, we follow where it leads. Days passed as they traveled deeper into uncharted space. The Vexari shared what they knew of the pursuing forces, a hastily formed coalition of species, all determined to claim the prism for themselves. Some believed it was a weapon that would grant them dominance. Others feared it would upset the balance of power. None understood its true purpose. Maya spent hours each day in communion with the prism, her mind filled with visions of what was to come. She learned that humans had been anticipated by the precursors, not specifically as a species, but as a type of consciousness. Adaptable, intuitive, capable of making cognitive leaps that more logical or spiritually attuned species could not. It's not that we're special, she explained to her team and their Vexari companions. It's that we think differently. We're problem solvers who don't always follow the rules of logic or tradition. We improvise, we adapt, we imagine possibilities that others might dismiss as impossible. That is precisely why many fear human potential. Drovak noted, your species achieves in decades what took others centuries. Finally, they arrived at their destination, an unremarkable yellow star with a single habitable planet. As they entered orbit, the planet revealed itself to be covered in the same crystalline structures they had seen growing in the prism chamber. It's a precursor world, Zivax breathed, his scientific detachment forgotten in the face of discovery. A seed world, left dormant until the prism could activate it. The Curiosity landed in a valley surrounded by crystal spires that reached miles into the sky. As they disembarked, the prism in Maya's arms pulsed one final time before dissolving into particles of light that spread throughout the valley, connecting with the larger structures. The ground beneath them trembled, and then the air was filled with a presence, not a voice, but a consciousness that touched each of their minds. UAVTON, the CYCLE continues. What cycle? Maya asked aloud, knowing the presence would understand. The CYCLE of TURNC. Each intelligence that URIC must EV into ALO EVOLEV beyond physical form, or be consumed by he void. We see DTTD is TARs with life, knowing they 8 EVE and 2 ALLY. One species, Wudo de HAVE mind, to Uland yours stand. And that's us, humans. URETA bridge. Neither DE first nor THELest, but necessary. Your minds QRNCT what o there is separate. You see patrons in CA chaos. Purpose in RA and do a many SS. You imagine. And so you and or stand. The presence showed them visions of a future where humanity would guide other species toward transcendence, helping them evolve beyond physical form before the void hunger arrived to consume all material intelligence. The prism had been both test and key, designed to respond only to a species with the right kind of mind to understand its purpose. "Why didn't you just explain this from the beginning?" Elena asked, the linguist in her frustrated by millennia of silence. Understanding cannot be given. It must be earned. Those who cannot discover cannot understand. As the presence withdrew, Maya turned to her companions, human and Vexari alike. "Now we have a choice," she said. "Do we keep this knowledge to ourselves, or do we share it with everyone?" It wasn't really a question. The human way had always been to push boundaries, to explore, to connect. The void hunger might be coming, but humanity wouldn't face it alone, nor would they abandon other species to their fate. "We share it," her team replied in unison. Even Drovak, the hardened military officer, nodded in agreement. The old rivalries mean nothing in the face of extinction. If humans will lead the way to transcendence, the Vexari will follow. As they stood beneath the crystal spires of the precursor world, Maya felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The burden of discovery had become the promise of a future unbounded by the limitations they had always known. Every alien species had failed to unlock the Nexus Prism's secrets. It had taken a human, not because humans were superior, but because they were different, because they could see beyond the obvious, imagine beyond the known, and connect beyond the logical. It had taken a human to change everything. And now, together with their alien allies, they would change everything again. The impossible was just the beginning.